Good evening, 12s, and welcome to the Seahawks 360 podcast, where we look at the Seahawks from every angle every week. I'm Candace Higgins,
Now I'm Tino Ganasius.
and we are back a little tired after a really long but extremely interesting weekend where the Seahawks have officially completed their 2025 draft class. And there's a lot to talk about. This was a huge class. I believe tied for their second largest. 11 players were selected by the Seattle Seahawks. And so definitely a lot to get into. So we'll go pick by pick, just kind of give our opinions. You guys obviously saw our live reactions. If you watched the live draft day coverage. If you have not checked that out from round one, please be sure to go back and check that out. But we'll start there and then, of course, give our reactions to what you guys could not see live as much. So the first, in the first round, the Seattle Seahawks selected Gray Sable with the 18th pick, and I give this grade an A plus for me. Tino obviously has his reservations, though maybe overnight he slept on it and thought about it, and maybe he's come around. We'll see. Tino, what say you? What grade do you give this pick?
I give it a B plus. I think
Okay.
which is a higher grade than I think initially
Yes.
I would have given it. I think so. Part of it is just position, right? It sounds funny to say, but I'm proud of the Seahawks for actually taking an offensive lineman there, an interior offensive lineman there. Um, I would still vouch for a Josh Connerly, Justin Simmons type of pick, but I understand, kind of the win now mentality. Um, is it the guard that I would have wanted, especially with Trevor Booker gone at 12? Um, Probably, right? Like, did I rank him two? No. Do I understand why they took him? What they like about him? I do, right? And I still say a 6'6" short armed guard who is coming from a lesser school does not on paper really work for me, but I trust that the Seahawks, believed in what they were doing. That his Senior Bowl showing really did elevate his stock, right? Make him the prospect that they wanted. I just wanted a guard. I wanted a guard or a center, right? And there wasn't a center to pick at 18. If you're not going to trade out, I wanted a guard, and I'm glad that. And I did not expect Booker to go 12, and so this is given I guess the pool of talent that was there, this is the best they could have done at guard. I would have given them an A had they taken Simmons or Connerly here. But am I angry about it? I wouldn't say so. I hope I'm proven wrong, right? I hope that my assessment of the type of player that Gray Zabel is wrong because I'm a Seahawks fan. Um, I don't love it, but it's better than Matthew Golden, right? It's better than if one of the tight ends dropped. It's better than going corner here. I think that they had to go offensive line. I have more offensive line comments as we go, but it's a B plus for me because of need. And there are a lot of guys that love Gray Zabel who do this for a living. I don't do this for a living, so I have to trust that both the Seahawks front office and the experts know what they're talking about when they love this pick.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm with you. I'm glad you sort of come around a little bit. You sound a
Mm,
little bit more level-headed about it. I think the context matters, like you said. I don't love a 6'6" guard myself. I really don't. But I also
short arm.
understand that it was sort of a in the short arms. But I also understand, given what you had to work with, they went with upside. And that's something I know you've been big on is take the upside swing. I mean, yeah, it's possible those arms are just too short and he flames out. But I think you took the smart, but you didn't outsmart yourself. You didn't try to get too cute. You
Mhm.
addressed the need and you addressed it with one of the highest prospects, pretty universally across the board. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But like you mentioned, just the process changed. John has been unwilling. He has been completely unwilling to take a guard this high. And I think,
Mhm.
and I hope this works out just because I want him to see the benefits of that. And obviously there's no guarantees about anything, but I think he's a great fit for the scheme. I I think that right now they're slating him in as left guard, which I like. Um, I like
Yep.
that. I
Yep.
like that versatile, but I also like that you got one of those spots plugged in. Hopefully, you can have Christian Haynes in this new system, rise above the cream of the crop. You'd love to see Zabel Haynes on the inside with either Olu or Sundale seems to really be pushing and impressing these coaches. And so I think they're going to give him a fair chance as well. But I feel a lot better about that. Then certainly you had to plug one of the spots in. He's a day one starter for you. He may start off rough. It might be a slow start, but most of your interior offensive line, the reality is they always start slow. That's kind of why I wanted a veteran presence. I still wish they would have gotten somebody in free agency, but since they did not, this was the next best thing you could do. And so for me,
Mhm.
A+ pick. Really hope he works out. But I gotta tell you, man, I like this guy's personality, if nothing else. I really do. I mean, it's been a while since we had an offensive lineman with some personality, honestly. Like if you I don't know if you listening in interviews or
I
what
did.
have you.
I did.
I I like the guy. Give me a farming country strong. Give me that guy. Like
All right.
I'm all in
So
on that.
I'll take arm length over personality myself. I'm not saying you wouldn't, but I don't.
You
I
can't
don't
make a
care.
man's arms grow, you know.
I don't care if dude's interesting or not. I care if he can block. And to me, I I don't know. I look so I give the pick in isolation a B plus, right? Because again, it fits a need, the biggest need on the team. I think it was like in neon letters, like Vegas style, that they had to pick interior
Yeah.
line. I don't believe in reaching for need typically, and I don't know if this is. I'm sure they did not consider this a reach, but if any year you're going to reach for a need, this was the year to reach because the interior line was so bad. But I look at what they have right now, and our lads has Zabel at left guard, Olu at center, and Bradford still at right guard. I think we all anticipate it being probably Haynes, or
Hopefully.
if Laumea ends up outplaying him in training camp, maybe Laumea, but
Yeah.
that's still bad, especially if you are right about Gray Zabel having a steeper learning curve, right? Which you would assume coming out of North Dakota State he would. So if they're expecting to run the ball up the middle in the beginning of the year, I don't know that they're going to be able to. And so, in terms of competing tomorrow, I don't know that they did. I would give the Zabel pick a B plus. I would give the offseason with regards to the offensive line like a D, if that makes sense, because they've done
Yeah.
so little else to make
Right.
this line better. And going into, and I said it, and I was upset day two. I said if they don't come away with two interior or two linemen after the first three rounds, going into the draft with five picks in the first three rounds, if they don't have two linemen coming out, I'm going to be disappointed no matter who that first lineman is. And I still
Yep.
feel that way because if you would have penciled in the center from Georgia here, right? And you would have had Zabel and the center from Georgia. Now the only position you're really worried about talent wise is right guard, right? And you're
Yep.
worried about the health of your right tackle. That feels much different to me than just Zabel and then a sixth and a seventh rounder, right?
Mhm.
Now, I love, we'll talk about the round two and three picks later.
Yep.
I
Yep.
love those picks for the most part. And so I don't know that I would not want those guys, but I do still believe if they would have come out with two interior linemen or two linemen, like a Connerly or a Simmons plus a guard or a center, out of those first three rounds, I would have given this whole draft a home run, right? An absolute home run, A plus. I can't now because Cross, Zabel, Olu, Bradford, Lucas does not look all that much better than last season to me because it's the same thing other than Zabel replacing your boy Tomlinson.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I get your point. I really do. And in fact, I agree with most of the sentiment. And in fact, it's why I sort of knocked my overall grade on the class. It's just because I agreed with you that they needed
Mhm.
to, two out of those five picks needed to go to offensive line, and it did not. like you said, not unhappy
Mhm.
with the direction they went, but I would be lying to say that that wasn't a disappointment for me because, frankly, it is. Um, I can also see what they're trying to do, and I can also see their thought process behind them really wanting to give Haynes their, earlier round pick last season an opportunity, especially given the
Mhm.
trend that we just talked about, where first year offensive linemen, especially on the interior, tend to struggle. And so hoping that he could take a second year leap.
Right.
And I do believe that frankly they were all put in a bad position. I talked about it with Gino a lot. I also talked about it with the offensive line. The position that the
Mhm.
play calling put them in was an extremely vulnerable one. And just adjusting their approach would or adding some variety, frankly, not being as predictable, I think would make a big difference for them. And so I think they're banking a little bit on that. They're banking on
Oh,
development. It's an interesting approach considering they've not yet proven they can develop, but they have made the right coaching staff where
oh,
if you're going to see elite being taken, I can see why they think that I can see why they still believe. You know what I mean? I think this is a little different in previous years where you kind of knew the guys definitively were no good. Like most of the time you looked at the offensive line, the depth, there was no young talent, there was no promising
sure.
prospects. I think you still liked what you saw from Lame. I think you know, he's
You
raw, but
see,
you even
yeah,
liked what you saw from Mike Jarrell.
right,
Like
right.
you saw some flashes.
Sure. That run to the right side against Atlanta, where Jarrell and Laumea opened the huge hole, was shows promise. I would disagree only in that I do think Grubb was terrible. I think the jury is out with Kubiak too. Again, we've talked about this. We've beaten a dead horse with regards to Kubiak, but he's got to show me first. I don't know that he's going to be any different than anybody else, given the fact that he's moved around so much. I like the idea that they want to run the ball. I like the fact that there's some things that he does. I love play action. I think play action is really smart. I think the numbers prove out that play action is really smart. I think all the best offenses run quite a bit of play action. I like that about him. I still think it comes down to the ability to develop the offensive line, right? Um, the other thing is, and we'll get into this more, I think, later, but from a broad picture standpoint, I still ask the question: can this coaching staff and can this quarterback win a Super Bowl? Because that's the ultimate goal. And I think there are too many questions to be asked to really be able to answer that in a positive way um, right now. But with regards to the line, yeah, I still love Laumea. I Laumea
Mhm.
or Hain. Give me one of those two playing well. Best case scenario is they both play well. They can slide Zabel to center. Zabel is a capable or a good center. And now you've got the semblance of a real line, right? And
Right,
I do think that's a possibility.
right.
Um, but there's so many ifs right now, right? I would have, to your point with regards to free agency, say you did it all. Say you went out and you signed a free agent guard or center, a good one, right? Say Will
Right.
Fries came or
Exactly.
someone like that. And then say you spent two of your first five picks on linemen.
Mhm.
Now you have this like influx of talent, right? Because even if they had five offensive linemen that we liked, someone's getting hurt, Abe Lucas, right?
Right.
At some point early. And then you're stuck in a situation where you have four plus a scrub or four plus someone else. And it's just, they just keep putting not just, they're like too short all the time on the offensive line with regards to talent and without a coach that has really proven that they can coach the offensive line. Now, I'm hoping our new coach can, but it's risky business. It's especially for a team that talks about wanting to establish physicality on the line and run the ball, right?
Well, I'll say this: when I said coaching, I actually was specifically talking about. I think there's a significant upgrade between Scott Huff and John Benton. Give me the guy who helped develop Dwayne Brown,
Hey,
and give
you
me
or I would have been an upgrade over Scott Huff. Seriously. Here's the thing: he was bad at Washington before Kalen DeBoer, right? Before DeBoer came in, he didn't do a very good job. Scott Huff has been the butt of a bunch of jokes for a long time. And then I was shocked that they brought him in only because he had that one phenomenal year where all of his linemen happened to play well. But I don't know that that was a product of Scott Huff. That was a horrible
I don't
hire,
think so.
as far as I'm concerned. And you saw zero development. You spent a high third round pick on a guard who was considered a can't miss third round pick guard, and he turned out to be trash last year, Christian Haynes, right?
Yep.
He was so bad. Scott Huff was so bad. So
Yep.
I think anybody over Scott Huff is a huge improvement for me. That is the one
And
coaching
I think that's
position
their point.
they should
Yeah.
spend
I know.
dough on an offensive line
I
coach.
think they agree.
Good.
I think they agree. I think they feel like the coaching left a lot to be desired, and that's why they didn't go all in on overhauling the offensive line.
Sure.
I get the sense that they might be willing to do that, but they first like to see, can they get some continuity? Can they get some development? Can they form a young core of guys, because also having these guys work together. So for
Right.
the sake of continuity, for the sake of, they know how bad I think
Right.
the offensive line coaching, especially specifically, was.
Right.
I believe they're banking a little bit on that. That's why I said I understand that perspective. My preference would still be to get a vet in here, because I
Sure.
just think that room needs it anyway. But I can't completely knock the process, even though it's certainly not the move I would have made. And I think it also leaves room for just to blow back on John, because
Yeah.
if there's not significant improvement, I think it doesn't
Yeah.
matter that he
If
drafted.
he was, I agree. If he was worried about, I think he should be worried, right? If he was worried
Mhm.
about his own security, he would have done a more immediate solve than
Correct.
the one that is, for 2, 3 years down the road. Now, I really do appreciate your point. I didn't think about this as much. You know, I think you're right. They believe there is talent in the room, in the
Mhm.
offensive line room. They believe that Laumea and Haynes are talented, right? I think they believe that Sundell has some potential. They
Correct.
believe that, I think Jarrell has a little bit of potential. He showed athleticism at minimum. And
Mhm.
so if you give your offensive line coach an F and you give your offensive coordinator an F, and you're going to bring in someone you believe is a B plus type of offensive line coach or somewhere in that range, you're going to
Or
see,
you see,
you don't have to make the biggest change in the world with your personnel because you believe this new person should be able to bring out a lot more out of the personnel that you already have, right? That's not something that I considered as much. I knew Scott Huff was terrible, but I was like, just wipe it all out, start all new. But I think you're right in that, especially those two young guards there's something there,
mhm,
and your new coaching staff in theory should be able to bring something really different out, and just them being in year two of their careers, understanding the
correct.
speed and the strength, and what's required in the NFL to be an effective guard.
And they all got meaningful snaps last season. I think you
Very,
could say that too. You also
very
had developmental guys that's not on the bench the whole year. Stone Forsythe, like his rookie, like the guys you just didn't see.
right,
These guys played in meaningful games, in meaningful moments, had
right,
to learn on the fly, got thrown into the fire, and you saw them struggle. But I
yep,
also think that might speed up and accelerate their
right,
development. So I understand the vision. I can't disagree with the vision.
hmm,
But I do think there's risks. To your point,
for sure,
if it's all said and done and the offensive line ends up looking like a trash can at the
mhm,
end of the year,
yep.
I
You got
believe
to ask
John's
some
going to
real
get
questions.
just as much heat again. Yep.
You got to ask some real questions. Now, I think the last point that I'll make is with regards to Laumea and Haynes, but specifically Laumea, the fact that Laumea didn't fall on his face, right? That we were kind of rooting, and he wasn't good. Don't get me wrong, but he wasn't so horrible that he just looked like a guy you wanted to cut, right? There were flashes. I think he was able to hold his own at times. To me, that says a lot about a guard who's just literally thrown into the fire without any prior notice. Pretty much, they were like, "All right, time for you to play." Right? Jarrell, I think, had more flashes of not having what it took, but there's still something there. And so that's a positive because if they were just straight terrible, they would have just fallen on their face, and sixth and seventh or fifth and sixth round picks get cut all the time, right? And they
Yep.
didn't get cut. They held their own. They're going to make this team this year. I think there's something there for sure. She moved round two.
Let's do it.
All right. So Nick Imanwari, uh, big safety out of South Carolina. Rumor was the Seahawks were trying to move back into the first round to get him. They loved him that much.
Yep.
6'3", 220, had the best combine workout really of any player at the 2025 combine. I watched a part of it. He looks like a linebacker, right? He runs like a incredibly fast safety, and he looks like a linebacker, a big
Yep.
rangy one, right?
Right.
You've got the size comps to Cam Chancellor. People have talked about that. People have talked about Mike McDonald having Kyle Hamilton
Mhm.
um, in Baltimore. That
Right.
he wants that kind of player. There's debate about what Eamon Warrior's real position is. Some people think the fact that he doesn't necessarily have one is a negative. Some people think that it's a positive and think he can play multiple positions. From what I've seen, right, from the tape I've seen, from the workout, the body type, all those things, I think he does end up as a box safety who can play on that second level. I think
Let's
most
see.
effectively on that second level.
Can't tell if
We're here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Tino went out or
No, I'm here. You're broken up, but I can see myself here.
if it's me, but
I think it's you. Um, you there now?
it looks like
Hold on.
might be having some technical difficulties there
Sorry, listeners.
with Tino. So, um, anywho, yes, I agree with what a lot of what uh, Tino was saying before he got cut off. The athleticism of Nick and Moray, and the fact that he's such a versatile weapon. What I love the most about him and his potential is this is exactly the kind of profile that a Mike McDonald would love. You've seen him work with guys like this. He's physical, he's a hitter, and he's got definitely some raw aspects to his game. But you've seen Mike McDonald take guys who are sort of a mold of clay, Tyrese Knight, if you will, and help them work on the discipline problems. Just let's see if we get you back. Are you? Can you hear me now? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can now. Yeah, I was there. Yours just became a little bit pixelated. I could still hear you and see you.
Okay. All right. So you heard everything I was saying here.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, essentially, really love the prospect of the mold of Clay. I think Mike McDonald has proven year after year, Baltimore Seahawks with Tyrese Knight, that he can take a sort of athletic guy with traits
Hmm.
and bring the best out of him just by the way he teaches. His coaching system simplifies the game for guys. So when it comes to, one of my biggest critiques of Tyrese Knight last year was his undisciplined on tape. And I just frankly had really not encountered a coaching staff that's been able to teach instinct.
Right,
But it seems like this system, maybe he's not teaching instinct per se, but he's removing some of the issues that undisciplined players may struggle with and allowing them to really key in on their own instincts and have that be accentuated in a way that is unique to him.
right. Here, if I can say a couple things about Eamon Wari.
Makes
Um,
me excited to have him. Just I think the mind of Mike McDonald is I'm still growing I'm still growing an appreciation for it. But anywho, man, I'm really excited for this pick because it really the ceiling is, I mean, sky high for this guy and his potential in this
hmm
defense.
hmm Can you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I think so first of all, before I stop there, I love the pick. I think it makes a lot of sense in this defense. It makes a lot of sense. Mike McDonald wanted him. Clearly, they were willing to move up to the first round to get him. They were ecstatic to get him where they did. But I think one of the misconceptions about Eamon Wari is that he's just an athletic freak and doesn't really have, he's there to be developed. I think he's not fully developed, but he made 62 tackles his first year at South Carolina, right? 85 tackles total, 62 solo. He had 71 tackles his sophomore year, sophomore year. And then in 24, last year, he had 88 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 4 picks. I think he's a player who is more advanced skill wise than people are willing to give him credit for. I think mostly you see those that kind of athleticism, and you think to yourself, okay, this needs to be molded into something. But I think he's there. I think it's more a matter of what do you want him to be? Is he an inbox safety in a base defense who is going to play, I think it shorter zone, um, or try to cover the tight end, in passing downs, or is he a big nickel? I don't think he's a big nickel because I don't think he changes directions well enough. Right? I would love for him to be that. This isn't Brian Branch of the Lions. I think he's a better athlete, but he's more linear.
Mhm.
And he's not a deep safety. He played some deep safety at South Carolina, but that's what you have Julian Love for, right? Is to play more of that deep safety. I think Kobe Bryant can do it a little bit. What Eamon Worry is to me is more of a chess piece. So if you can teach him, or if he can blitz, right, and the team sees him lined up on the weak side without a tight end, you're scared. Because here's a dude that's sub 4'4", 225 pounds, 25 pounds, coming off the edge. He'll be at that quarterback in an instant if you don't block him. Or he's still capable of covering a back out of the backfield or covering a tight end. So to me, he's better closer to the line. I think that was a huge need for the Seahawks, right? It was what they wanted Jamal Adams to be. It's why they were rumored to keep Jamal Adams last year, even though he had been such a bust. Is they wanted that close to the line safety who's a chess piece, who you can move around, who creates fear in the other team. I think even Warwick can immediately be that. The other thing it does for me is if he can establish himself immediately as a physical threat at the line of scrimmage, meaning he can help shut down the running game as an eighth guy in the box. He can be a threat on the blitz, right? Now you've freed up Spoon to be a whole different type of player, because Spoon was in the slot, right? And he's not, I think that was a really good position for him to be, but you want to see him covering people for the most part. And now he's a threat everywhere, and you can't focus solely on Spoon. So to me, this makes the defense much more multiple, right? You can't center on any one thing anymore with this defense, and I love that. I love this pick. I was ecstatic when they made the pick. I give the pick an A+. I don't guarantee that he's going to be a star, but I think the probability of him being very, very, very good is really high. I'm pumped.
Yeah, completely agree. Especially with your point about Spoon. I mean, Spoon has always been thin of frame, right? And
Mhm.
you're trying to keep that guy as healthy as possible. I believe that they plan on playing him at big nickel, though. In fact, that's when Mike McDonald, when he was asked about how they envision him, where they see him, they want to start him out there and grow him, sort of expand his game. But of course, Mike McDonald loves to move people all over the place. So even though he might be at one place more than the other, obviously we'll see them all at different spots. And I think it's going to depend on your matchups, right? Like
Yeah,
McDonald is
for
good
sure.
about that. Like depending on the
For sure.
player, he will absolutely change his game plan. So they're not locked into. So if there's an obvious, because of the struggles will change direction, there's an obvious
Yep.
mismatch there. Mike McDonald's not going to have any, qualms about having Spoon play primarily in at
Right.
nickel that day, which I'm fine with, right? Like that's okay. But you love the long term goal of having Spoon allocating, still using him as a weapon, but
Right.
allocating his talent where, frankly, I think they needed a little bit more in corner.
Right.
Because, well, they didn't draft a cornerback. We can talk about that later, but I think even more so, that emphasizes and really, like you said, adds multiplicity even more so to your roster.
It does. If you think about it too, you had Kobe Bryant at times kind of miscast a little bit, playing closer to the line than you would want for that body type and that athleticism. You had Spoon close to the line quite a bit. And while I love him there, I don't think that's where you want him all the time. Now you've got a bigger body, more physical, hold up against the run in a different sort of way, freeing up Bryant and Spoon to do what they do best. And now you can sprinkle Spoon in, right, as an element of surprise, as opposed to the dude that's always there. And I think he's much more effective that way. The one thing I was thinking about too is Imanwari. You don't want him in a follow position, right? You don't want him trailing a back. You don't want him trailing an elite tight end, even though he has that makeup speed. I think you want things to be in front of him because he's able to accelerate so quickly and hit so hard. And so I see him in a lot of zone. I think I would, and it goes against what I said earlier a little bit. If he could develop into a deep safety, not all the time, but
Mhm.
have the ability to play some deep safety,
Right.
how fun would that be to see that dude coming downhill, right? From a deep safety position, whether it's to lay a hit on a tight end or someone over the middle, or to pick a ball off from with the kind of range that he has because of his athleticism. That would be so cool. We see that with Kyle Hamilton, where he's all over the place. That's what I'm excited for. Is you've got a new like queen on a chessboard,
Mhm.
right? And Mike McDonald's defense becomes elite when he can play with that. And I think that's what he saw in Eamon Wari, and I think that's what they have, quite frankly. I'm confident in the pick. I'm excited about the pick. Is probably outside of Milrow for me, it was the most exciting pick. Those two together. But it's going to be a freaking blast to see what Mike McDonald chooses to do with him.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's the fun part. You
Mm-hmm.
not only do you have a weapon, because you know you can have weapons. What was his name? Isaiah Simmons.
Yep.
He's a weapon guy,
Yes.
but then the question was, how are you going to use him? You've
Right.
got the guy who's got the best track record at using not just accumulating, uh, but properly using those type
Mm-hmm.
of weapons. And
Yep.
it's not just boom, like you said, anymore that you can key on.
Yep.
It just adds so much to this defense that was already playing at a top 10 level
Right.
prior to his, you know, this addition to the team. And
Yep.
so, yeah, super excited, even more excited for this defense. I gave it an A. I graded an A.
I give
Excited.
it an A as well. I think the only risk for me um, is if they don't figure out what the best position is for him, and if his ability to kind of his flexibility and ability to move um, horizontally and stay with some of the shifty running backs and some of the faster tight ends isn't quite what it needs to be for him to hold up in man when they do choose to play man. Those are the only two things.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I think he's going to be phenomenal.
Did you have an issue with the trade? The trade conversation, I
No,
seem to be fine with.
the only issue I had was, if let's say it's a third round pick that they gave up, right? Say you
Right.
held on to the three and you used the three on the center from Georgia, or you used the three on another guard. That would have fit a need
Yeah.
more. Um, but the upside, I chase upside in sports in general. I tend to. And so I think I would have rather had Eamon Wari and given up that pick than picked another lineman. I would have picked a lineman earlier than the next one.
Right.
But if it was up to me, I would have given up the three, taken Eamon Wari, and with the next pick we're going to talk about, that's where I would have picked a lineman.
Agreed.
But that's nitpicking in a lot of ways. I am glad that they acquired Eamon Wari. I think the other thing is when your team is that passionate about a particular player and their belief in that player is so strong, I want to see that, right? I want to know that this is a dude that we targeted from day one. We're in love with the guy. We need to have him. We have to have him. We believe in him.
Yeah.
That's You don't often see those players fall on their face, right? Teams will give those kinds of players as much as they possibly can to succeed. And so that makes it exciting for me as well that they wanted him as badly as they did.
And John's track record of trading up, particularly in the second round, is a strong one. DK
Yep.
Metcalf, Tyler Lockett,
Yep.
there's a couple other ones. The names are escaping me. First, Jan Reed, I think, was another one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worked out all in all for John when he's done this type of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
that your last comment and thoughts leads me into the next selection, or leads us into the next selection at pick 50. They drafted tight end Elijah, I think it's Arroyo, like
Royal.
Arroyo. Arroyo. Okay, cool. Um, I do like the pick. I graded it a B. I like the pick, but like you said, I would have loved it had they been able to take, an interior offensive line at that position. But I believe in best player available. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's only so much you can knock for that. Like if you do the whole draft based on need, then they've done that in the past and had terrible drafts. I also like Arroyo, given that they also drafted someone that they can use for blocking purposes. That was my biggest knock on Arroyo, was just I was concerned. He was a top 5 prospect of mine. I just wasn't as high on him because I didn't think that he would fit in this particular offense. But I also like the prospect, like we talked about before, of having a pass catching guy. Like, I see the value in a pass catching tight end, a threat that can help replace the loss of DK Metcalf. And
Mm-hmm.
so overall, that's why I like the pick, especially since they solidified the blocking questions that I had, because he's an effort blocker. It's not like he's unwilling to. He just struggles with that in developing it. And so they've got someone who they can lean on a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
early for that, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And that assuaded some of my concern to leave me at overall a B.
This is probably, of the high picks for the Seahawks, this is probably my least favorite. I give it a C.
Okay.
Um, the idea of an athletic tight end that can catch is a great one, right?
Right.
I think this is an offense. We know Kubiak likes throwing to the tight ends. This is an offense that wants a tight end that can catch the ball. Those things I believe in, right? I think the idea of a pass catching tight end is smart, an athletic one who can get downfield a bit. That's who he
Right.
is.
Yep.
He's got size, right? Listed 6'4", 245. I've seen 6'5", 250 other places. But my issue is twofold. One is, when you if you were to rank the immediate needs of this organization, I don't think pass catching tight end is that high, right? I think interior lineman is higher. I think a third tackle who could become a second tackle is higher. I think you have to start thinking about replacing at running back, which to me is more important than the tight end. I think a real third receiver is an issue. And that's not even beginning to talk about the defense. I think the defense is okay, but to me, tight end wasn't the place to go here. You've got one more year of Fant. I don't know that I don't love Fant, but I don't know that Arroyo is going to be better than Fant right out the gate. And if you are truly going to try to run the ball in the way that they want to, I don't have a problem starting Barner and then bringing a tight end next year. They must have really loved Arroyo. The last point I'm going to make that really does bring it from, say, like a B minus to a C is he didn't work out, right? He was hurt and he didn't work out. And so we're trusting on tape that whatever time he ran in the 40, whatever time you see on tape is what he is. So it's such a risk to me to take a tight end who you don't have workout numbers for. Um, and when I watched him at Miami, I didn't love him. I think that he's good. I didn't think that he was great. So he's the type of player that I would have rather see them get in the third, fourth round, because I don't think he's a sure thing. The upside has to be there for him to be a top 10 tight end in the NFL if you're going to pick him in the second round, in my opinion. Right? This is where Sam Laporta went. This is where some of the other really elite types of tight ends were drafted. You have some that went in the first round, but a lot of them go in the second round. I'm not, there's too much risk. He may indeed be really, really good, but he has to be very good for you to justify a second round pick. And there are too many variables that are not answered for me to take him there. So I would have rather him taking a center. I would have rather them taking really any lineman, offensive lineman for that matter, at this position. This was my least favorite pick of the top picks that they made.
Yeah, I get that. I disagree with some of the points though. I think tight end was a higher need than you may give credit for, especially because if you think about the fact that depth matters, the NFL season is longer, and I know you putting all your eggs in the AJ Barner basket, but I like the kid. I'm just saying, if he goes down with injury, you are screwed. Like, I just mean from a general body count perspective. I just think tight end was a higher need than people want to admit. And I also think they see that upside with him. And I can see what they
Clearly.
see. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
see that Sam Laporta, obviously not from blocking, but they see that like dynamic tight end. And I just think this team needed something dynamic. This offense, we talked about it. This offense needs something dynamic. I'm not 100% sure that they are going to keep Noah Fant. Noah Fant better be looking over his shoulder. I
Sure.
think they are looking to probably trade Noah Fant. I doubt they're gonna cut him, but I think they'll probably be looking to use him mid-season. It wouldn't surprise me if they used him mid-season, kept him on the roster for now because it's not a cap space issue as much, given they have that. But see how the team fits, see if they can use Fant to get a need and fill a need that comes out in the middle of the season to help the team improve. So
See, I don't
think
think
that's
they get anything for him. I think someone in a contract year with, you know, a tight end in a contract year who's not great really at anything. I think you're lucky to trade Fant and a round 7 for a round 6, right? That's the kind of trade that you see for a player like that. But I agree with you. I would not be surprised to see him gone by the time the season starts. I really wouldn't, because I don't think they're afraid to go with a blocking tight end as their starting tight end, and then sprinkle in the pass catching tight end, as opposed to most teams that are the opposite, which is go with the pass catching tight end as your primary and the blocking tight end as your secondary. Um, I don't know. We can disagree about how much of a need a tight end that particular tight end is, but um, I don't. I give it a C. I don't hate the pick. It's just my least favorite of what I consider to be a very good draft.
yeah,
That
I'm
makes
just
sense.
gonna think. I see the vision. My preference too would be an interior offensive line. That's my preference.
Mm-hmm.
But I also am excited to see them invest, in getting some dynamic weapons with some upside, getting
Mm-hmm.
someone who you got a game plan for
Sure.
potentially. Now we don't know, what he'll look like on the field. To your point though about the testing, that doesn't really bother me at all because they get access to the miles per hour that players run on
Sure.
the field. So if you've got that information and you've got it for over the court, they've got it for however long he's been playing, like I'm fine with that. Like, yeah,
Right.
the 40 is cool and everything, but it's not the only data point. We don't have that info, obviously, but they do. And so I'm sure that sort of assuages their issues. Now you have to hope that he can, like you said, there is a question about transferring that to the NFL field, but there's that question about every player. Like,
Right.
that's what they did in college. Will that translate on the NFL field? So I
He
like the
he ran at 21.8 miles an hour during his long catch and run against Georgia Tech, which it said only 6 NFL players recorded a higher max ball carrier speed this past season. I don't know if they're talking about tight ends or general, but that is fast, obviously.
yeah,
It
yeah,
also says that he did 22 reps in the bench at the combine. So
okay,
there's some athleticism. Obviously, there's athleticism there, but there's just
right.
some stats to support that.
Yep, need
Um,
somebody to, need somebody to threaten and
yes,
diversify. And my last point, and why I will defend the pick a little bit, is if you're a coordinator, no matter how you feel about the coordinator, is saying this is what I need for this scheme
yep,
to be successful. They
yep,
can't afford to say, you'll be all right. You know what I mean?
yep.
Like,
No,
yeah,
for sure.
they're after a struggling offense last season, they can't afford to put out another one, especially something that could have been avoidable. So I get why to them that was a priority as well.
If you're planning on trying to win this season, right? Like
And
if
they said
we're
they
if we're
are.
looking if we're looking at 2, 3, 4 years down the road as our window to win, I might be of the opinion that I want to build the offensive line before I want to build anything else, and I'll get my tight end next year, right? That would be, and I don't know enough about the tight end class next year to speak to that, but for me, I'm building from the inside out, period, and always. But we'll see with the pick. I don't hate it.
Yep.
I just think that there were personally, I think there were bigger needs.
Mhm.
All
All
right,
right.
so I'm sure
Let's
this is
get
where we're going to
spicy.
disagree the most. Is this next
Get
one?
spicy. Let's get spicy. All right. The Seahawks at pick 92. Third round select quarterback Jalen Milrow.
Yep.
Um, Tino, I'll let you lead us off.
I love the pick. A+ for me. Here's why. For one, he's a player that was seen as being able to go as high as low round 1. Um, Round 2, that's where people expected him to go. He drops to round 3. Quarterback was so funky, I think, in this draft. Um, but the real reason why I love the pick for the Seahawks is the Seahawks needed to have a developmental quarterback, right? I was pretty clear on that I feel like they needed someone with upside, someone that they were going to develop, someone that they wanted to teach. In order to take Milrow at this place and believe that he is that guy, you needed to believe in his ability to learn and get better. everything that I've heard about Milrow is that he's a gym rat, is that he is the hardest worker in the building, that he wants to be great. And I think there's some really truly something to be said for that player that has that desire to be great, right? That dedicates his life to his craft. And he's coming in with, you see players like that sometimes, but not with the athleticism that Milrow has. I also think that we've seen this with other players, when you have the kind of athletic ability that he has, you buy yourself a much larger window to throw the ball, because people have to be so scared of your ability to run. And my question with him is, do the Seahawks have the people in the organization to develop him, to teach him how to be that? I do think it's interesting that Coach McDonald was around Lamar Jackson, right? And saw what an athletic quarterback could do to a defense. And I'm not saying he's Lamar Jackson, not even
Right.
close. I think he's faster and I think he's stronger. I don't think he's as elusive, right? And I think Lamar was, his accuracy, I think, was underrated coming out. People wanted to paint him in a corner,
Right.
and he was more accurate than people understood. I
Agreed.
don't know that Milrow is, but the one thing I do love about Milrow as well is the ball he throws best is a deep ball. Now, the personnel that the Seahawks have currently doesn't fit that. But if the idea of a quarterback that can run the way he can and threaten a defense the way he can, who is able to throw a deep ball out of play action, is so cool to me. It's what we saw with Russell Wilson in Russell Wilson's prime, right? It's what he did best. So for me, this was you didn't have to spend a one or a two to get him. I personally thought he was deserving of a one or two myself. Um, I love him. I think, he's exciting to me. And yes, could he be a complete bust? I think he can, right? If he can't throw the ball, if he can't hit the broadside of a barn, he's a bust. And he's going to end up playing a different position. But the upside of him, if it does click for him, Jalen Milrow is the type of talent you can win a Super Bowl with. Sam Darnold is not that kind of talent. The upside with him is there for you to win a Super Bowl. If we went into the season with Milrow and Locke, and that's it, or I mean Locke and Darnold, I'm like, this is some boring milk toast stuff. We're 12-5, and losing in the second round of the playoffs is really the best you can ask for from this team, no matter how good the defense is. With the Milrow, a year or two from now, you can see if it clicks for him, you can see this team winning a Super Bowl. You can see this team, making it to the NFC Championship, right? He's coming in with something really different, and he's such a modern quarterback. And it's scary, right? You don't want to put all your eggs in the Jalen Milrow basket. If this year's development and what we see and what coach, specifically what the organization sees from him, if they don't see what they need to see, then you trade up and you get a great quarterback next year, right? I don't think you say he's our developmental guy for the next 3-4 years and we're doing it and that's that. I think you have to continue to look, because he's such a risk. But the fact that there is that potential there is what excites me. He is, in some ways, people see him as the athletic equal of Lamar. They're different, but he has that kind of athleticism. He's got some Jalen Hurts in him, right? That's the other comp. And I don't like making same race comps all the time, but the reality is those are the guys who he's most like. He's also like a leader, an incredible citizen, right? A hard worker. The things that you talked about with Zabel, with the personality, you need that from a quarterback.
Right.
You have to have that from a quarterback, in my opinion. Sam Darnold is the antithesis of that to me. This dude brings a lot to the table. I'm rooting for him to succeed, not just because he's a Seahawk, but because I wanted to see him succeed in general. So for me, this is an A plus. I'm really excited to see him play, and I think he has the base to be great. I don't think anyone knows whether he will be great or not.
Yeah. So for me, my initial grade was like a D
Mm-hmm.
initially, mostly because this was a pick since they did go tight end with Wario. I really wanted to see some interior offensive line. I really did. Like I thought that was a sweet spot. Like you get a guy here, you can still get an impact guy, and I'm cool. I'm cool with that. For me, to not do that was initial was part of my initial reaction for into I've been more so the advocate that I really don't care as much about having a developmental. Everybody else seemed to care about that more than me. I was looking at the 2026 class where it's deeper. I think the ceilings were higher, and so I was cool to wait a year, frankly, to get a prospect that I thought might be better next year. But I can't say that getting that because they got Milrow this year that now they can't get it in 26. So there's that. But I can see where they're trying to get, and I think all of your points are valid. I've sort of moved it up to a C after doing a little bit more research of exactly like his flaws specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my my stance in general is that a project QB is almost always a project QB. Like there are just
Mm-hmm.
very few instances where you know a guy rises above that. But I will say the circumstances with which the Seahawks have placed Milrow sort of helps assuage my concern a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
They've got Locke under contract for 2 years, actually, I believe. So there is genuinely no pressure. It's not even just a 1 year, all right, you're up next
Right.
year, kid,
Right.
type thing. Like they don't have to now. They can move off of Locke, I'm sure, if they really wanted to. So if he accelerates his timeline, cool. But they can genuinely do a Jordan Love type of development. And
Mm-hmm.
that actually we did see work out. So I went ahead because of that thought process, looked up some of the scouting reports from like you said, Lamar Jackson. I was just curious in terms of how they compare. Obviously, Lamar, even in that scouting report, was one of their strengths was that he had command of an offense that was a complex system,
Mm-hmm.
where processing is not a strong point for Jalen, but it was not a strong point when I went and looked at the scouting reports of Jordan Love. That was one
Right.
of the knocks on him. That was also one of the knocks on, like you said, Jalen Hurts,
Jalen
right?
Hurts, huge knock
Yep.
on Jalen
It
Hurts,
was
right?
it was a knock on Jalen Hurts. And so after considering that, and then another thing that really helped me feel better about it is I kind of felt nervous about it when they did the initial press conference because they were asked about Jalen Monroe. Do you see him contributing to the offense in different ways? And it seemed like Mike McDonald's answer was almost like he's a quarterback. We're going to play him at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Any snaps he gets is exclusively a quarterback. And I kind of feel like that was a missed opportunity. Like if they weren't going to use him in any packages or at least get him out on the field and a few snaps here and there, like a Justin Fields type package, I kind of
Mm-hmm.
thought that was a little bit of a wasted opportunity. But Colin Cowherd reported this morning that he's got some contacts and essentially they plan to use him 8 to 10 snaps a game. That's what
So
he heard from their
I think,
source.
yeah, I think what Coach McDonald was alluding to is we didn't draft him to be a running back or a tight end, right? I
Okay.
think what he was saying is he's a quarterback for us, but we're going to use him in those packages, right? That are going to be a threat, force you to game plan in a much wider way.
Okay.
Um, but that he is a quarterback. We're not drafting him to be anything else. And I think it's when you have so many. We've talked about this before. There's so many stereotypes about athletic quarterbacks, and they can't do this, and we're drafting him to be something else, and telling Lamar he's a running back, not a quarterback. All those things.
Mhm.
I think that Coach McDonald wanted to come out immediately and squash any kind of thought that anybody would ever have that this isn't a quarterback, right? And I think he did that
Gotcha.
mostly for the benefit of Jalen Milrow,
That's fair.
which I can appreciate.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um, but yeah, I think we're a lot closer. I came closer to you. You came closer to me. I still give it an A+, but I think, this is a lottery ticket. I think even if you picked him in the low first round, you have to acknowledge this is a lottery ticket. You don't know what you're getting. You don't
Right.
know if this guy's going to ever be a starter. But you know what? The same could be said about Jackson Dart,
Yeah.
right? Do we
I
know that Jackson Dart is good?
Yeah, I think that was a reach.
Do
Anyway,
we
that's a
know?
conversation for another
I
day.
think
But
I think
that
we
was a
know.
that was a reach for me.
Right. I think we know Cam Ward is going to be at minimum an average NFL quarterback. I think he's going
Yeah,
to be better, but that we know at minimum.
right.
I can say I think at minimum, Shador Sanders is going to be an average NFL quarterback. I
See
believe
if he
that.
gets a chance.
I believe that. Right. But with Milrow, if you acknowledge the fact that it's a huge lottery ticket, I'd rather have him as my lottery ticket than Dart. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I get
So
that.
So I don't know. The other really interesting part for me is going to be the transition if he does indeed start. Say he starts after Darnold's 2 years. Those two quarterbacks can't be more different. And so you're going from what is a play action pocket based guy who with a little bit of escapability in Darnold and is accurate, right, and throws a lot of balls kind of in the intermediate area, to the strong arm deep ball, lacking accuracy, uber athletic quarterback. So what does the transition of this offense look like in year two of Darnold and year two of Milroe on this team, if those are your two quarterbacks moving forward? Because the offense will have to change. Darnold can't run the running stuff that Milroe does. And Milroe probably can't run a lot of the intermediate game that Darnold does in the beginning. So if he does indeed become the starter, to me, that transition and the philosophical kind of change that we'll have to see from the Seahawks is going to be really, really interesting to watch.
Um, Here's another point. Maybe that surprises you. I actually don't. Okay, I'm not going to say there's no overlap. Obviously, there is, but I think there's a. I think this maybe it's a crazy take. I think they can both thrive in this offense, and I say that because uh, you put too much on Donald's plate, and he sort of shows, it exposes
Yep,
itself, and
sure.
so they've got built into the system a lot of, um, you know, the center takes care of the protections. Depending upon the plays, it's sort of, you can, rollouts, half field,
Hmm.
easy to read, easy to process, boom,
Hmm.
boom, bam, make it easy on the quarterback type of system.
Right,
I think Monroe could really thrive from that too. Obviously, there will need to be some adjustments. Man, I'm not saying you can, put him in the same role,
right,
obviously, but if they're already going to be running packages for him, and I
right,
trust that they can do that given their experience with Taysom Hill, even though I know they don't plan to use him the same way. But I
right.
trust that they can do that. If I don't see how you just can't expand on the packages you already have, make it a little bit more of a central part of the offense, and without having to overhaul the whole thing, because I think Monroe will still need the benefits of having the center collar protections,
Sure.
having, easy read, boom, easy throws type of offense
Yeah.
for
So I,
him.
I think that's the issue though for me is if you have, let's take like the quintessential Shanahan, um, Kubiak type of play, which is, quarterback play action, rolls to one side, has some kind of high low option or high mid low sort of option, right? Where you've got a back or a tight end in the flat, you've got a receiver running a more intermediate route towards the sidelines, and then you've got a guy deep. And the
Mhm.
read is you go high to low, right? Is your guy open deep? No. Is your guy open in the intermediate? No. Okay, I'm going to dump it off, right? It's a very basic, quintessential, Shanahan, Kubiak type of play.
Mhm.
And Darnold running it is not a running threat. You don't expect him necessarily to go deep, but he's going to be accurate probably in the intermediate and in the short. So he's going to get what the play gives him, and he's not going to really run. Whereas Milroe is probably going to go deep more often, is also a huge threat running the ball, especially if you get him out in space like that, but is going to be a heck of a lot less accurate in the intermediate and short unless he really does improve on that over the next year or so. So I guess the play calling may not be completely different, but where they choose to go with the ball and how they produce yards, I think would be.
Yeah.
Because if Milroe can't hit that guy 15 yards out, then your offense looks different, but he might gain 10 yards running the ball, right? And we're going to see Milroe roll out and have a running back wide open in the flat, and he's just going to flat miss him because he's not very accurate. But then it might be first and 10 the next series, and he hits somebody on a deep ball for 70 yards because he's willing to take that chance. I just think the offense will look different. I don't know if the play calling is going to be completely different. I hope it is, right? I think if Milroe is your quarterback, you want to build your offense to accentuate his athleticism. And so I think there would be, to your point, if it's that package that they put in this year, which is probably going to be like 80% run, 20% pass from Milroe. If you can incorporate that into your day to day, once he becomes a starter, then the transition does look smoother. I agree. But that to me is something I'm really going to be paying attention to, is how they choose to layer those things in and how the offense changes over time
Well,
because
I'd
of
say
it.
this. If we're talking in 2 years, right, when
Mhm.
Darnold's out,
Yep.
Monroe's in, and
Or
he
next year.
still can't, and he's still missing wide open dudes at the 15-yard mark, then they can't build an offense around this dude regardless. Okay, I'm just gonna be honest. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you gotta be able to check the check down. If true development happened, you need for him to be able to hit those throws.
But
Like,
their
because
quarterback,
that's his weakness coming in, right? If that's still his weakness, then to me, he didn't develop. He didn't develop him.
Well, let me ask you this: can Jalen Hurts hit the guy in the short, like in the flat? And is
Competently.
he good
Is
over the
it a
middle?
strength of his game? No, but he can operate. It's not a
I
strength
also
of his game, but
right.
it's also not.
It's not the strength of Lamar's game either.
Well,
Lamar
Lamar's
can
game,
do it.
I
Lamar
think.
can do it better now than he could in the past. But Lamar's first MVP, he couldn't do it very well,
Well,
right?
no, not then.
His first MVP was for other reasons. I just think I think it's important that he gets better at it. I don't know that he has to be perfect at it because a lot of the guys who most quarterbacks can hit the short and the intermediate but don't have the accuracy deep, right? Like that's the effectiveness of a Purdy or of a Dak, right? Or some of these other quarterbacks that don't have the strongest of arms. They're not throwing to big rainbows like a Russell Wilson. They're
Yeah.
more accurate in the or a Bo Nix, right? That type of quarterback. I just look at a Justin Herbert isn't the most accurate guy, short and intermediate. Intermediate, yes, he's got great arm talent.
Mhm.
I'm just saying that I think that I can see a scenario where he may not be super accurate, short and intermediate in the beginning. He may never be, but that's not necessarily going to hold him back if he's able to complete the deep ball some and if he's able, the other thing with him is he's so explosive that if you take care of the ball, you don't have to be super accurate. If you take care of the ball, you don't put the ball in harm's way, you're a super threat to run the ball, and you can hit some deep throws, you're in business. That's what Russell Wilson did, right? Russell Wilson wasn't super accurate over the middle.
Yeah.
And he wasn't, and there were times where he would miss
He
a
didn't
guy
throw there.
short.
He didn't throw there. He just avoided it altogether.
He did, but I think in part because he wasn't confident in it and he wasn't
Yeah.
great at it. But he completed so many deep balls and he scrambled for first down so often at the beginning of his career that it didn't matter. That's where I think, in the fact that Milrow is so smart and willing to put in the effort, I have confidence that he may not be the best processor in time, but I have confidence he can get better at it. And
Yeah.
all those, I'm rooting for the dude, right? And I think not only because he's a Seahawk, but because I think those quarterbacks historically have gotten a raw deal from evaluators. And I think that is the direction of the NFL. I just think that the direction of the NFL is going towards a quarterback who is a threat in all ways. Um, and I think it's important to not, people comp to be frank, any athletic black quarterback to the next dude who either was great or not, right? People comped him to Anthony Richardson and said because Anthony Richardson failed, Jalen Milroe is going to fail. But what are the commonalities, right? Richardson has a rocket for an arm. Milroe's arm isn't quite what it is of Richardson, right?
Right.
But Milroe is more of a threat on the ground. Also, Milroe spends all of his time with football, and there are questions about whether Richardson is dedicated to football in the way that he needs to be. So I just think that everybody's different, and I'm excited to see again what Milroe is and how he attacks this process. I also think Mike McDonald's not going for anyone who's not going to be dedicated to football,
Oh, for sure. For
right?
sure.
That's his personality. So they've done the research to know that that's who Milroe's personality is. You can't have a quarterback that isn't dedicated to it in that
Yeah.
way. You can't.
No, I agree with you, and I think there is some upside to there's a lot of upside to the pick. I've gotten to the point where even though that's not the pick I certainly would not have made, I
Mhm.
understand the pick, and there's still a lot of excitement behind it. If nothing else, just hearing that they plan on using him this year adds a level. I was really worried about being able to function as an NFL offense
Yeah,
without any threat of dynamic,
yeah,
anything special, right? Anything that you have to game plan for.
sure.
I was
No
really
threat.
concerned about that. And if he can help provide that, him along with Arroyo can help provide that this year, it gives me a little bit more optimism again about what this team can look like under Sam Darnold, despite the fact that I still don't love Sam Darnold. But I think if you can include it this kind of way, then you got a better shot. You got a better
See,
shot.
I don't care if they're that explosive or not. Myself, I guess that's the Michigan in me. If you can run the ball, you don't have to be explosive, in my opinion. But you got to still be able to run the ball, right? And that's the part that's in question for me. I think what's more important about this year's team is you can't put the ball in harm's way because if you let the defense do its thing, and you can take care of the ball and chew up clock, you can win that way.
Yeah.
That's the way I think they are planning to try to win, and then you layer in some of that explosiveness down the road. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just like I said, I'm excited about the pick. I think it's a fun one. Um, if he is the starter, I think it's going to be a ton of fun. And if he ends up not being good, he's not good. And you say, okay, it was a third round risk on a lottery ticket. The lottery ticket didn't pay. We move on to the next thing. You assess it. I think you need a true assessment going into next year's draft. You
Yeah.
need to know, are you going to be patient with this guy for the next couple of years because you believe that he can be a star? Or, you know what? I don't think his accuracy is going to get any better, and I don't think his processing is going to get to the point where he's an NFL starter. We
Mhm.
need to make a move to go get a Ia Maleava or whoever else they decide is the arch. Move up for. No one's going to trade the pick for Arch Manning, but that type of elite prospect.
Yep.
But this works for me. This works for me. Um,
We gotta, man. I forgot how long this draft class was.
we can move. We'll move through it.
Yeah, we'll get the
So they
moving.
didn't have a four. In round five, they took three guys. So Riley Mills, defensive lineman out of Notre Dame, Torrey Horton, excuse me,
Quarterback.
wide receiver out of Colorado State, and Robbie Oots,
Mhm.
I think is more of like a fullback, H-back type out of
Right.
Alabama.
Right.
He played tight end there too, but I think they've moved him to that fullback position that Kubiak wants.
They confirmed it.
Um, what do you think about the Mills pick first? He's 6'5", 295, was injured. They said he probably would have gone higher had he not been injured. What do you like about him? What do you see in him?
I like him. Apparently, he had the same amount of pressures as Mason Graham, from what I understand. So he's got talent. My biggest knock on it was, I thought at some point in the draft you'd start addressing needs. At least I get the upside in the beginning, but if they were gonna go D line, I really thought they should get a nose. I mean, continuing to play Byron Murphy there, which is what they
Mhm.
seem intent on doing, is just waste a first round pick. And so
Mhm.
it's not anything personal against the player. I just felt C plus because I was frustrated with, and I still am frustrated with them seeming to overlook this uh, need. I
Mhm.
think on the defensive end, but I think the player can still work out to be well. I'm not familiar with his injury. I can't remember if it's going to linger. I
I
believe
thought
it's
it
going
was
to linger into the next
a
season.
shoulder. I thought it was a shoulder, but let me see.
Is it going to linger? It's more so the
Yes,
timeline.
he's not going to be ready until to really truly play. I think until more mid-season.
Okay, yeah. So that was also that's what helps knocks it. I was gonna feel a little bit better about it if he could maybe come back. Now they don't really need a three tech though, so maybe the redundancy is probably the best player they had. I had dudes that I liked better at
Right.
that point in the draft. Some like you said about Oreo, I don't hate it. Right, I see what they see, the
Mhm.
athleticism. We love short arms, so just go ahead and get ready for that, Tina. The whole team is
Right.
Rex
That's
arms,
true.
the guys. Yeah.
So
But
I think
athleticism is there. The upside is there.
mhm. I
They
think they
don't
see
need
him as a five. Um,
it. Okay.
as a
Yeah.
five technique, probably. So maybe he's depth as the a 3-4 DN sort of player.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I do like that better. I like that better.
I don't know. I'm with you. It's a C plus for me. I heard plenty of people talked about him as a player that is better than where he's going to be drafted. Right, the kind of guy
Yeah.
who goes under the radar because he was hurt. I think he
Right.
was hurt in the college football semifinal. I think,
Hmm.
or the playoffs at least.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of player who I think you need those types of dudes on your team, like an average but not elite D lineman that can take snaps.
Right.
Isn't going to hurt you, right? Is going to play to the assignment. Might put a little pressure on the quarterback sometimes. Doesn't excite me. Round
Mhm.
five shouldn't. But I'll tell you what kind of round five pick would have excited me: a dang offensive lineman,
Yeah. I agree.
which is why it's a C plus. Now the player
Agreed.
itself, as a grade, is probably a B, just
Right.
in isolation in the fifth
Agreed.
round. But you have this glaring need,
Right.
right? Now, I also agree with you that if you would have went and got your biggest D lineman that was available to play nose tackle, that would have been a much better play for me. So I don't hate the dude,
Right.
but as far as what the Seahawks could have used, I don't. I don't like that they used it on this particular position. I'm not with that.
Yep. And I'm not convinced they couldn't have got him later. Because that's other like
Well, yeah,
maybe
you
he's wrong, but
24 picks later, you had another fifth round pick, right?
right.
You might have been able to
That's
get
also
him
part of
then.
it.
Torrey Horton. So wide receiver, Colorado State, 6'3", 185, was the clear number one receiver at Colorado State for a couple of years. I actually, funny story, I started dynasty with Colorado State on the college football game on the PS5 just because I like taking bad teams. And so I got to know, like, through the game, the game version of Torrey Horton, and he was really good.
Yeah.
Um, but he ran a 4.41 at the combine, 37 and a half inch vert. The athlete, he's a tremendous athlete. And what I like at this range is not only is a tremendous athlete, but there was tremendous production
Hmm.
over the course of his career. When you combine those two things, of course, you have to ask the question, why isn't he drafted higher? But I think that there's something really great there potentially. And if he comes in and is able to, like, he's a good route runner, he
Hmm.
just, with the athleticism,
Great hands.
if you're able to really capitalize on that and he becomes your number three next year
Hmm.
at some point, he's the type of talent that you wouldn't be surprised to see him become your when Cup goes away, then he steps into that lineup as the number two. I
Yep.
also think a 6'3" guy who runs a 4.41 and is able to get deep a little bit is such a great complement to JSN
Yes.
because they need that outside guy to complement JSN. So the process for me was really there. Um, I think that there's a lot of, I think the upside might not be sky high because you know, he's coming from Colorado State and he's an experienced receiver. It's I think that he's not great at anything, but to me, that says number two, number three type. But those are valuable, right? We know what happens when you run out of those dudes. You're running out there, Ella was it Derek Young and dudes like that is not that doesn't work, right? Even a Bobo, it gets
Boba.
exposed.
Yeah.
And Torrey Horton has the talent to not get exposed. He had the talent to hold down like a number two outside receiver job. He could turn into that Valdez Scantling type of role too if he can run, where he's your deep threat, takes the top off, may not put up a ton of stats, but he plays a role in opening up the intermediate and short for the other receivers. So I love the pick. To me, this is an A. To me, this
A
is an
plus. A plus for me. Yep.
A.
I'm actually maybe I'm higher on him than you. Maybe it's the highlights. Perhaps I'm not factoring into the competition enough, but I think he could be a number one. It wouldn't surprise me if in a few years, rather, you looked up and he was a number one type dude. Because I do think he's got great speed. He ran that 4.41 off 2 months off of, was it a torn ACL?
Injury, yeah.
Yeah, two
Mhm.
months, and he said he was 2 months off. So he I think was running 4.35,
It
something
was a
like that.
knee. It was
Hmm.
a knee. Hmm.
Before he had that injury. So I think he's got elite speed. I think he's got great hands. It'll be fun to see somebody with natural hands for once, because as great as JSN is, he's a great natural route runner. I
Hmm.
think he's got good hands. I don't
Right.
think he has great hands.
Right.
DK, we all know, struggled with that. So
Has
like
a stone.
compliment.
He he's out there.
Yes,
He's out there
raw
catching with boxing gloves, man.
advocate.
I love
Raw
DK, but
advocate.
he's out there catching with boxing gloves. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love the upside here. I love the dimension. I love the complementary nature of his
Hmm.
skill set.
Hmm.
Um, I think I think he's good either way. Like you said, I was over 3, 2. Even if he can reach one, I think it's still great value in the fifth round. So it doesn't really matter if he becomes anything.
Right.
I think he only failed because of the injury, and I did hear something about production fatigue. I think people just kind of gloss over who you are and just kind of forget about you, especially once you get deep in the
It,
draft. And so,
totally. If you don't have that, the upside that everyone's looking for, and you put up good numbers, they just consider you like you're a good college player. Is it going to translate, sort of thing? I
Right.
think there is some like you call it, production fatigue. And if he's not great at anything, they just say, "Oh, he produced because he's better than the competition at Colorado State," but
Right.
he's not going to do it in the pros. I think he has the ability to be better than that. I'm very excited about that pick.
Yep.
Very
A
excited.
plus. All right. Pick
Next one,
175. Robbie. Say it
Oots,
again. Oots.
Robbie Oots, like oops, but
Like
Oots.
boots. All right.
All right,
I
so
didn't like the pick.
why not?
C minus.
Really?
Yeah, no, for real. I
Tell me
didn't like
why.
the pick. It's the value. Like I just feel like you can get a fullback in the sixth or seventh.
Or a
And
free agent.
yeah, it's a little
Hey,
high.
hey, go block that guy.
He better be like Kyle Juszczyk or something. Like
You can say,
I
yeah,
like
hey, just go block that guy, right? Plenty of people can do that.
again, we only had one interior offensive lineman at this point, and for every pick that they continue to not get that guy, I just was more angry. So I still, I mean, while I did say earlier that I was happy that they got a blocking guy, I would have been just happy. I would have been fine if that was in the seventh round. Like it didn't make me a difference when they got the guy. Um, Hopefully he can be something, man. I know he's a tight end, so maybe he can be. I think that's when they was Juszczyk a fifth round guy. I think they
Something
got
like
him higher, right?
no, I think something like that. All
So
right.
I mean, if he's got that kind of upside, and I do know that Kubi actually know how to use him, then cool. But I'm just never gonna be a big fan of a fullback in the fifth round. Not in the year 2025, at least.
So I want to give it an A.
No, you do.
I do, which is so counter to like the way I typically am. I'm gonna give it a B. I'm gonna try to use my head and give it a B. So a couple things. One is I am so excited to have a fullback.
Yeah,
I
that's
am
fair.
so excited to have a fullback. I think, it's kind of like when we talked about the quarterback under center being different for the running game
Hmm.
and how much, play action you can run out of that. It is night and day difference, right? When we saw what running, plays under center could do for the Seahawks.
Right.
I feel the same way. Certain running backs are just better with a fullback in front of them. Some running backs are better out of a single back situation.
Hmm.
But the ability to wipe out a safety in the hole or wipe out an inside linebacker in the hole really does change things, right? And I think that is there's something to be said for that. At minimum, I want the Seahawks to be multiple where that threat is there,
Right.
right? There is a threat of a blocking fullback coming into the game. We didn't talk about it with Milrow, but I'll bring it up with both Milrow and Oots. If you can convert, we saw it with the Eagles. If you can convert on third and fourth and one, third and fourth and two by just running the other team over, now
Yep.
you've controlled the ball for another 3 downs. Now you can
Right.
take more time off the clock, right? Now you can score in the red zone. I think there's something you don't have to always be explosive if you can pick up those short yardage first downs. And we know how many those the Seahawks didn't pick up over the last couple of
Right.
years. You want your team, you want to be confident in your team going into third and fourth and one. Seahawks third and fourth and one, I'm like, well, they're about to either run play action or not get it, right? And
Yeah.
so
Shotgun.
dudes,
No, we were shotgun. We lived in
yeah, we
shotgun.
were with shotgun. 6'4", 2, and part of that is the offensive coordinator too, but 6'4", 270 coming out of Alabama, who is basically just a blocker. The value isn't, you're right, the value in the fifth round isn't really there necessarily, but I love the idea. Also, let me just say this dude has to be white. If your fullback is going to be that big and you're going to use your fullback in that way, give it a white dude, right? The third the third strength listed on what I'm looking at here. So, first strength was blocks with great leverage. I love that. Second strength is good athletic ability relative to his size, which I love because he's 6'4", 270.
Mhm.
You know what the third strength is listed? He has great
White.
hair. He has great hair.
You're kidding me. Which
No,
after
no,
report
that's
are
the
you
third
reading?
strength. And so for me, I'm like, hey, yeah, let's go there, right?
I
So
cannot be Bleacher Report.
491, 26 reps on the bench, 34-inch vert, 911 in the broad, right? So this is a strong dude. So for me, should you use a fifth round on him? If it's your third, fifth round pick, I don't mind it as much. Is the value there? Probably not. but I love the idea, and I love the fact that they are prioritizing a lead blocker in this sort of way. The other thing is, hey, if he can truly block like this and Milroe does pan out and you got an explosive tailback, now you can run a lot of stuff with a really good blocking fullback, a talented running back, and an athletic quarterback, right? Just look at what the Ravens do. The Ravens have a 300-pound fullback who blows holes open all the time. He is a part of the secret to success for Lamar Jackson
Yeah.
is having that big fullback. So I think that's some of what they're trying to replicate. I love it. I gave it a B just because the value isn't necessarily there, and he's going to be a one-trick pony. But I like the one trick. You know, I like the one trick a lot.
You talked me into a C. You really did, and
Okay,
I'm a little bit more hype.
good.
I'm feeling better about it. I think your point is great. I also want to point out, I believe that helps the offensive line.
Yes,
So
big time.
you didn't mention that, but I think what, as you were
Big
talking,
time.
what got me most hyped now is yeah, the offensive line help and not
Yep.
putting as much pressure again, putting them in better positions to succeed when you see flashes of talent. I think only helps them in anything at this point to
Yep.
help the offensive line.
Yep.
I'm for.
Yep. I agree. All right. So they had one pick in round 6. Bryce Cabaldu. He played tackle at Kansas. He's going to move into guard, 6'6", 315. Another one of your short arm guys.
I'm
Uh,
telling you this. I
Seahawks are
told you
loving
it was
them
the
short.
class, Tino. You didn't believe me. I told you
They
this
love.
entire class.
They
T
love
Rex
some.
arms.
They love some short arm white dudes on the offensive line. They do.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. Like,
yeah.
so I don't. So 4-year starter at tackle. All Big 12 honorable mention in 24. Aggressive mauler type. Not uber athletic.
No, no,
Not
no. I think
lanky.
he's the athletic guy. They said he had a.
Mm-mm,
I thought I saw he had a profile something like.
mm-mm.
Are you sure?
That's not what I see. Did you look at his picture? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Don't
No,
quote.
I thought
Nobody
because
quote me. Don't
like
quote me on
everybody's
it.
talking about how
Hey,
athletic this class is.
Jason
They
Hoff,
only get
don't.
mobile dudes.
Jason Hoff, don't quote me on that. I know you're an attorney too. Don't quote me on that one. No, I don't.
I could have sworn that he was a mobility guy for especially for his
No,
size.
he's mobile because he can't play any of the 3 positions on the offensive line very well, so he swings between them. They like that. Hey, they like themselves some swing tackle or some swing offensive linemen too. They took one in the 1st round. They took one in the 6th round.
I'm gonna double check that, but I could have sworn that what I heard from him is that he's an athletic guy. I thought maybe I'm
One of the write-ups I have here, just Cabaldu has great size, offers positional flexibility, can serve a variety of roles in a pinch, which is desirable quality for any day 3 offensive lineman. Seahawks take 2 at a position of need offensive guard. Plays with Mauler-like mentality, but needs to refine his technique to consistently block NFL defensive linemen.
Bleacher Report says he's a loose, twitched up mover who wins as a run blocker, executing combinations and cutoffs in zone concepts with fluidity and
Okay.
range. So yeah, he's a puller, a
Okay.
short arm puller.
Short arm puller. That's what they like. That's what
Yeah,
they
because
go
I think
for.
they said this is the Seahawks class is the most athletic class since 2003, based on whatever what is it,
Because
Amazon
of Jalen Milroe, that's why. And Eman Wari, it ain't because of them short arm offensive linemen, I'll tell you
They
that.
are elite offensive linemen when it comes to moving, man. Those dudes are moving folks with their
I
short
know
arms.
they want that. I know they want that outside zone scheme where they can all pull and move and all that. We'll see. We'll see. I still love me some Laumea, so
They said
I
they're
hope
gonna
they
move
don't.
so fast you the arms won't
I ain't
matter.
even gonna see him. Can't see him.
Like a ninja.
I'm looking for him. Like, hey, what offense? All right, round 7. Let's do this.
All right. Man,
Damian
let's see. Okay, we got
Martinez.
Damian Martinez,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then we got 223, pick 234, guard Mason Richmond. Didn't know anything
Mm-hmm.
about him out of Iowa. And then at pick 238, wide receiver Ricky White the third.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at 7th round, at that point, you gonna have some. It's not hard. It's hard to not. it's hard to criticize any seventh round picks, but I think they got great value. Some people had Martinez as a fifth round guy, and because the running backs are the running backs,
Mm-hmm.
everything got pushed down. I like him. He's not Chris Carson, but I think they're trying to again address the 3rd and 1,
Mm-hmm.
the fourth and
Hey,
one type situations.
let me tell you. So being up here in the Northwest, I watched Damian Martinez at Oregon State a lot, like a lot. This dude is a beast. Like he is tough to bring down. He runs with heart. He runs with power. It would not shock me one bit to see him be the starter in 2026. It would not shock me one bit. Wouldn't shock me to see them let K9 go, bring in another smaller back to play on third down, and for Martinez to take over. I like him better than Charbonnet. I like him better than Charbonnet right now
I get that.
as a
I can
as
see
an athlete.
Charbonnet. I think you need Ken Walker's skill set still. I think
Yes,
he's
but
still
that's
like
what
a
I'm saying
high
though
upside.
is that's what I'm saying is if Martinez say Martinez was a starter in 2026, you would probably need someone with that more athletic, fast, third down type skill set to be on this roster as well. Whether it's McIntosh or someone else like that, right? He needs a different sort of complement. But I'm telling you right now, if you're trying to run the ball down someone's throat, if you're trying to pick up a 3rd and 1, if you're trying to like run on 1st and 2nd down and get to a place where you're in 3rd and 3, this is your dude. I saw him at Miami plenty because Cam Ward was always on TV, but at Oregon State too. I'm telling you right now, I was shocked he was there in round 7. I love the fact that they picked him. I'm a sucker for a big back, right? That's the Big Ten in me.
Yep.
But 6'2", or 6 foot 237, 237 pound, like put together running back is nasty.
A+ for
That's
me.
nasty. He
A+
ran a
for
four and
me.
he ran a 4.51 and he broad jumped 10.4 with the
Yep.
35-inch vert. So the
Love it.
athleticism is there. And he has more shake than you would expect him to have.
Yeah,
I
and his
just
size especially.
I'm excited.
Me
I'm
too.
I'm
I really like the kid.
really excited.
I like the player, and I like the process of what they're trying to get and the
Mhm.
value. Like I think it was a high value pick.
Mhm.
One of the better things you could do in the 7th round for sure. So yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. Um,
I also
plus,
like the this idea that they want to run with power, right?
yes,
You see that with the fullback pick. You see that with the Martinez pick. It's telling you, they're kind of prefacing or laying it out there for us to see what they want to be in the future. And even with the Milrow pick, right, the threat of the run with the quarterback and not just a quick fast runner, but someone who can run with power. I love that's my style of football. And to me, that's really exciting. You see a lot of that from the Eagles, right? The Eagles have these enormous offensive linemen. The threat of Hurts running, right? You've got Saquon back there, who is not as big as a Derrick Henry, but runs with tremendous power. Look at the Ravens too. It's no coincidence that they picked up Derrick Henry. They love that power game. So I think the Seahawks are trying to go for some of that. I don't. Of course, it's a 7th round pick, so we'll see. But it's an A for me. One of maybe A+. One of my favorite picks of this draft.
yeah.
I'm with
Um,
it.
I think my favorite thing about this draft class is we, sort of wrap. I know we got a couple players to
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about,
yeah.
but as we wrap up, one of my favorite things is like to your point. There's an emphasis on power. There's also an emphasis on athleticism. It seems like they're trying to thread the needle between we can get out and move you in space.
Yep,
They're trying to play both ways, but
yep,
also if we got to get a 4th and 1, and we
yep,
got to have it, we're
yep,
gonna have some dudes that can make
yep.
sure we get it. So for
They're
as
gonna go get it. Yep,
athletic as we are, we're not going to compromise strength. So we're not a
yep.
finesse athletic team. We're a strong athletic team.
They
I
got
love that.
they built so this draft. They're building attitude. They're building athleticism. They're building strength, speed.
Yep.
It's it's what John Schneider built his reputation on, right? This is what he did when he first came in with the Seahawks, is to find athletes like this. But I the big so if we rewind, and we don't even have to go through Richmond and White as far as I'm concerned. They're going to be they're 7th round
I
picks.
like White as a punt returner.
Yeah,
So I like that for
and
a special team.
and
Our
I think
special teams also got
there is something there. We'll see whether he's better than the next punt returner that they have, right?
I'm
Um,
optimistic. It was pretty bad
so
last year.
Here's the I guess the point I'd love to finish with
Yes.
this draft is they we talked in the very beginning when we first started podcasting together about, this is under Pete Carroll, the lack of a true identity.
Yeah.
Who is this football team, right? Who are they? What's their attitude? What are they trying to accomplish? When you play the Seahawks, what should you expect? And they were all over the board. We
Yes.
didn't know who they were, right? One day they're a running team, the next day they're a passing team. One day their defense can stop the run, the next day they're giving up 250 yards, right? You just
Hmm.
didn't know.
Yeah.
You didn't know. You didn't even know if they were cover three anymore, right?
No, they
There was
weren't.
like there was nothing. There was nothing for you to actually know about this team. Now you know exactly who this team is going to be, right? You look at the defense. The defense has they're going to try to be multiple up front. They're going to try to surprise you with who's coming. They're going to play, that secondary is going to be ball hawking and nasty. They play with an attitude on defense. Ernest Jones is going to pop you. He's going to be in the hole every single time you try to run. Ernest Jones is going to be there, right?
Yep.
It's what the defense is. The offense, they're trying to build in power. They're
Hmm.
trying to run the ball, right? They're going to run some play action. They've got a quarterback that they believe can take care of the ball and be accurate. They're going to be angry when they turn the ball over. You've got your two best receivers are good in the intermediate, right? They're not big deep threats. They're not going to try to be explosive in that way, likely unless you have, no safeties deep or something like that. They're going to try to run the ball. Like, we know what they're trying to do. Kubiak, to his credit, has an identity. You know what you're getting from a Clint Kubiak offense. So now, even though I don't necessarily love the players as much, specifically the quarterback and the receivers,
Right. Right.
we know what they're trying to do. They can hang their hat on something. And what this does is, say you're a 7-win team, an 8-win team. We'll talk about that down the road. That's what I think they are as of right now. But we also know when they go into this draft in 26 and they go into free agency in 26, we know what they're looking for, right? That's cool to me. The fact that there's an identity gives me something to root for.
Yeah.
And so I love a great defense and I love a great running game. So I don't know. I give this draft an A minus. I think there are some incredible picks in this draft. We talked about it. Eamon Worry, Milrow for me, Martinez. Right? There's some picks in here that I love, that I think are just dope. Um, and there aren't a lot of picks that I hate. I don't love the Arroyo pick, but it's more about the value than it is the player,
Right.
right? I think they did an incredible job, this draft, I walk away as a fan so much more excited to watch this team than before this draft.
For sure.
Before, it was like, this is a Sam Darnold led team. How fun is this going to be? Milk toast ass team, right? That's the way I saw it. At this point now, it's more like, okay, I'm going to watch this defense and I want to see what Eamon Worry is, right? I want to see how Milrow might fit in eventually. I'm rooting for Damian Martinez to be great, right? I'm going to be watching this line to see if they gel, and there is some talent there now.
Hmm.
So I'm pumped. I'm glad they did it. I'm color me pleasantly surprised that they came out of this draft making the fans more excited to watch this team, because I fully expected them to go pick the most boring dudes, and for us to just be like, what are they doing with our squad? But it's quite the opposite for me. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, I've thought it over. My initial grade was C plus. I kept going back and forth between B minus, C plus, B minus, C plus. Ultimately, I tweeted out that I landed on C plus. I think I go back to B minus because I'm not no longer as harsh on the Jalen Moreau pick.
Mhm.
Still don't love it. Still would have loved the offensive lineman more. But I can, like you said, I've been complaining about identity. I see identity, and maybe that's what gets me. Like, to your point, maybe that's what sort of swings me more positive
Mhm.
about it, because I
Mhm.
understand the vision. I appreciate the vision, and I can see a lot of ways that this falls apart. But I can also see ways where this can be best draft since 2012, right?
Yep.
So there, I get why everybody's excited about it. I can't share everyone's sentiment, but I am excited for the prospect that they might be right. And maybe I'm just a little skeptical, uh, especially because I more so than you. I've seen the Kubiak offense take advantage of the deep ball a little bit more.
Mhm.
I think it may be more deep ball than you think. I think you forget how gunslinger Sam Darnold is. I
Who's
think
catching them though? Hey, who's catching them though?
well, right now I kind of like our room.
Tori,
I
Tori,
like
hey,
Oreo.
Tori Horton's catching all
I
those
like
balls, or
Forrest
what?
JSN, Old Coop. Give me Old Coop, JSN, Old Coop, Arroyo, and Horton with some Bobo mixed in. You know, like I'm good with that. Plus, I keep forgetting they got MVS. I mean,
And
he's there.
this ain't college. It's pro.
Well, Sam Darnold to throw it far. To what team is the question? I think I
Ah,
think I think you're misunderstanding Sam
ah,
Darnold's game. His game is not
he
lack
said
of
to what
ability to
team?
throw. It's just what team's going to catch it. That's what I worry about with Sam Darnold. The
That's
guy,
cold.
the
That's
guy,
cold.
the guy threw left and right last season.
Oh
I'm not going
man.
to sit here and pretend like he's Brock Purdy. He is not Brock Purdy. He is more like Jameis Winston than he is Brock Purdy.
Look,
He's
okay.
gonna throw it deep, man. I just don't know if Cup's gonna be able
Let's
to catch it.
let's go 15 seconds though. Like, do you remember how bad Sam Darnold was? You remember how much of the butt of all jokes he was like 2 years ago?
Yeah, because he don't know what team he gonna throw it to.
We turned around and gave him what $100 million.
Which it's not bad quarterback money, but that's where we are, man. Now I will say this: he looked
Maybe
better with the
$100,
49ers.
not $100 million though.
He looked better with the 49ers. He looked better
He did.
with,
No, and quarterbacks can learn and they don't get hit as much, so they
and
can
the
be
Jets are
better.
terrible,
I don't know.
right?
I'm not with it. I'm not with it. All right, let's
We all
wrap this up. Let's wrap
we
this
all
up.
know that we all know the Jets have ruined careers. So
This is true.
I'll give him I'll give him that. The
Yep.
Jets seems to be where quarterback careers go to die.
Yes.
Um, Poor Justin Fields. Anyway, I think man, it's been a long one, but it's a big class. It's so much
Hmm.
talent, so much to talk about. It's a very interesting draft for sure.
Hmm.
So looking forward to continue to dive into this. Do you know when Ricky minicamp is? I was trying to get a
I
feel
don't.
for when it was. I
I don't.
couldn't. I looked up. I saw OTAs, but I thought rookie minicamp was before OTAs. I couldn't see the dates for that. So
Right.
hopefully we can get some information about that to come out soon because I'm really excited for as down as
Mm.
I was at least initially on the Jalen Moreau pick,
Yep.
knowing they have a plan for him this year that I
Yes.
think is sound, sensible, and makes sense with the progression. And I think I I'll just end here. I think this draft could be the future if they do this right. If they
Yep.
develop this talent right,
Yep.
this draft could be the game changer. Could
Yep.
also not be, but
Yep.
I see why they. John Snyder said he felt like it was a historic night
Hmm.
for the Seahawks.
Hmm.
I can get he walked it back a little bit. I think he was excited, but I can kind of see why he would say that.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
because if these picks hit, if it ends up being anything, it probably won't be close to the what was that, the 2022 draft where you had all these day one starters. I don't think
Right.
it'll be that, but I think it could be one where you look up in 2-3 years maybe and see similar results as
Yeah.
that 2012 class. Man,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
huge.
and you might walk away with 3 stars, right? If
Right,
everything fell right, you could walk away with Zabel, Eamon Wari, and like a Milrow or an Arroyo or someone like that. There is superstar potential
right.
with a handful. And that's what's exciting, right? You weren't
All
just
pro,
plugging holes. You drafted potential superstars, and
all pro
that's what
dudes.
that gives me excited. It makes me excited.
Yep.
I again, I'm pumped. I'm ready. Let's start the season now.
All
Let's go.
right. Well, we got a while to wait. A lot to look into between now and then. I'm going to be eating up everything. I'm enjoying hearing these players'
Hmm.
interviews, and like I said, really want to see rookie mini camp get started.
Hmm.
So I can get some intel on some of these guys. But anyway, Tino, tell people where they can find you. Let's wrap it up.
Tino Junior 20 on Blue Sky. Again, baseball, football, whatever you want to chop it up about. I'm there. Um, just watching a lot of baseball right now, and like you, excited for rookie minicamp and to see what this team is capable of. This draft gave me a new injection of energy and excitement with regards to the Seahawks.
Much needed. Much needed. Be
Hmm.
sure to follow the show on X at Seahawks360 Pod. Also, be sure to find the show if you're on Blue Sky at Seahawks360. Now, if you are listening on YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, rate our show, give us feedback, give comments. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, that's it. That's all the time we have for today. That's it. And as always,
Go Hawks.